Here's some backstory first. I'm a 25-year-old male, and I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. I work for the postal office, and for short, I'm a mailman. This whole encounter has been happening for weeks, and it finally boiled down over a few days ago. I'll just describe my job duties for another quick backstory. I'm responsible for delivering mail to many houses, about 17 full blocks worth of homes. Depending on when I finish delivering the mail, I get to finish my day early. During the time, I started delivering around 4 p.m., and since it was around winter time, it became dark at around 5. Now, for the story. This took place in February of 2016, and I was doing my normal routine. About 5 blocks into work, I deliver mail to this creepy looking house that I always stop by. It was the first time this house had mail for me to deliver. Just entering the yard gave me a chill. Since I listen to many stories online and watch movies, I became paranoid like Michael Myers was watching me from the window. Oh, and I should mention that there was no mailboxes. There was only a small type of a hole thing on the front door, and I usually just open it up and drop the mail in there. If it was a bigger package and couldn't fit, I was supposed to ring the bell first, and if no one was home, I would just leave it behind a bush in their front yard and leave a note. Sadly, for me, this was a package, and I did have to ring the bell. Lucky for me. I rang the bell, but at the same time, I was scared and curious to see who lived in this house. I rang the bell again, but still, there was no answer. As I was getting out my sticky note, I heard a voice from inside saying,
"Is that for me?"
I calmly said yes. I have a package for Philip Nance. Then the guy inside replied,
"Oh, I'll be right out."
At that point, he sounded like a normal guy, but when he came out, I will never forget the image I saw. It was this 40-ish-year-old man with no pants on and only wearing a girl's shirt. His penis was on full sight and he was stroking it right in front of me. I had no idea what to do at this point, so I just gave him a quick, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he looked at me with the biggest, ugliest smile that I still can't get out of my head. I just dropped his package on the floor and tried my best to get the fuck out of there. This house was at the end of the block, and I was lucky enough to cross the long street to get out of that house. I soon finished my work for the day, and when I got home, I just ignored everything because I was really tired. Okay, now I was at work again, and when I got the papers I was supposed to deliver today, I quickly checked through all of them to see if I had to stop by this fucking creep's house. And he did have mail to be delivered that day. In my head, I promised myself if he did anything dumb or creepy again, I wouldn't have it, and I would call the police right there. When I got to the house, I see this fucking guy sitting right in front of the fucking door. As soon as he sees me, he says,
"You're late."
I ignored him, and I came up to him and just delivered him his mail. That moment, I was ready to fight if he tried anything stupid. As soon as I started walking away, he said, "See you Monday." It was Saturday. This happened, and no mail was delivered on Sundays. So, here comes Monday, and again, I had to deliver his mail. This time, when I arrived in the house, he wasn't in the front yard, and lucky for me, it was just one piece of mail, so I could quickly just slip it in there and run. As soon as I opened the hole, he preemptively opened the door, and I caught full sight of him jerking off right in front of me. At this point, I was more angry than scared. I was tired, and I didn't have time for this. I shouted at him, "What the fuck are you doing?" He said,
Nothing. Why? You want to join me?
I told him to fuck off and that I would be calling the police. I did call the police, but it was only after my shift because I was still on duty and had to deliver packages on time. When the police did come, I explained everything to them. The following day, my boss gave me time off and they would let someone else deliver that day and to not go in that house, even though he had mail. The police called me into the station and told me that there was no Philip Nance living in that area and that the home belonged to someone else. When the guy came back from a business trip with his wife the following week, they claimed there should have been no one in the house and that they thanked me for calling the police because that naked fuck shouldn't have been there in the first place. None of this makes sense to me, and I don't get why he was in that house waiting for the mailman to come by and jerk off right in front of me. A few weeks went by, and I was returning back to my normal routine. But this time, when I passed by there were police cars and a scene all over the house. When I asked one of the neighbors from across the street, they told me that the homeowners were attacked and were taken to the hospital. It wasn't until the following day that I found out that the creepy fuck was a perverted home invader and that he had been following this couple for a while and he knew that they were going out of town. I guess he was staying there for a while the homeowners were gone. Being a postal worker, I had no idea how the packages were sent with no return address. Oh, and for the creepy fuck, turns out that the real homeowner shot him during the attack the other day, and he was wounded, but unfortunately, he lived. He was arrested and is hopefully rotting behind a cell. Months later, I'm back doing my normal routine, and no more weird shit has happened. I've spoke to the attacked couple, and they told me that they were doing alright and that they were recovering. They told me that sick fuck would have probably tried to hurt me too, and that I was lucky and smart to call the police. I thanked him again, and finally got to meet the person behind this creepy house. Turns out that they were just some kind of business people, and him and his wife were always on business trips, which explains why his house looks like shit. He never cleaned the yard or trimmed the long grass. This is my creepy encounter stalker story, and I hope you all enjoyed it. It has been said that the most dangerous animals on Earth are human beings. I firmly believe that. My name is Jeff. The following happened when I was 8 years old, and my buddy Jake was 10. It was a blistering 95-degree day in midsummer Minnesota. The air was very thick. Jake and I were biking along a side street in our neighborhood. It was around 6:30, and we were both looking to get home to cool off after a long day of mischief. We rode by a Chevy van. It was normal looking, not the typical creeper van with no windows. It was parked on the side of the street. We both saw it and didn't think anything of it. As we were pedaling past it, someone stepped out of the driver's side and ran up to us. It was a man. He looked to be in his late 50s and had very greasy, dirty hair and a scrubby beard, and he was wearing a torn wife-beater shirt. He stopped us and shot us a very cryptic smile. Then he asked,
"You boys need a ride?"
And Jake immediately replied with, "No man, we're not too far from home. Thanks." His demeanor changed rapidly, and now the look that came over the man's face was even more unsettling. It was the look you would get if you witnessed someone kick your dog. We both knew better than to accept rides, treats, or anything from anyone we didn't know, especially someone that looked as greasy and grimy as this dude. We started to ride off, but not before the man grabbed Jake by his right arm and asked,
"Can I at least get you boys something to drink? You look thirsty. I have some pop and water in the van."
I immediately stepped in and yelled no. Jake managed to wrestle his arm from the man's grasp, and what he said next reverberates in my mind to this day.
"You boys better get in the fucking van."
We looked at each other and shot off like two cars at the starting line of a race. Jake turned around and said, "Piss off." I then turned around to see the man just standing there, staring at us with a look of indignation. I kept looking behind me, pedaling as fast as I could, and luckily, he didn't follow us. Jake lived just down the street from me, and he managed to make it home and hid. I got home, which was only a few blocks away from where this all went down, threw my bike behind my house and ran inside. I hunkered down in the living room, in the fetal position, and I just didn't move. About 10 minutes had passed when I heard the back door open and nearly shit my pants. Did he follow me? I thought. I was about to take off out the front door, but then I heard, "Jeff?" It was my mom. I have never been more relieved than I was in that moment. She asked me what was wrong, and I wouldn't say. She asked me what was wrong, but I wouldn't say. Later that evening, though, when I had calmed down, I looked at the front window and saw the van that had stopped us creeping down the street. The terror immediately rekindled inside me. It was my belief that the man was driving around the neighborhood looking for us. But then I saw it drive out of our street and disappear. I never saw that van again. Thankfully, I don't know what that man's intent was, but I'm glad we didn't stick around to find out. For whatever reason, we didn't notify the police. My story should serve just as another reminder that this world is full of creeps and misfits. So my name's Trevor, and I had a friend named Andrew. I'm 12, and he was 11 at the time this happened. So, in my town, we had a playground with some backwoods, so him and I were at my house waiting for my parents to get home before we could go to the playground. And yes, I know this sounds childish for a 12-year-old. Eventually they got home, and him and I headed out. I had some quarters, so we hit the local pizza joint to get some candy out of the vending machines. We stocked up, and then we started to go to the playground. It's about a 30-minute walk from my house to the playground, so we talked to pass time, and when we got there, we started playing hide and seek. It started out as just us playing in the playground, but then we got into the woods. So I ran into the woods and at least tried to cover 200 feet and crouched behind some bushes and yelled, "I'm ready." From where I was, I could see him. I saw that he stopped counting, and at this point, I was laying in the mud, but I didn't really care. But then I heard a twig snap behind me and leaves crunch. I look around to locate what was making the noise, but I saw nothing. I just tried to blow it off as a squirrel, but then I heard it again. I look around again, but this time, I see a man watching me. And he had something shiny in his hands. Thinking it was Andrew with his phone, I got up and ran further in and crouched behind some more bushes. But just then, I could see Andrew on the playground looking for me, and my blood ran cold. I acted dumb and started walking out, but what happens next was the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. I heard rapid footsteps of someone chasing me. I looked behind, and there was the man, I bolted out of the woods and yelled to Andrew, saying that we needed to go. Andrew looked at me questionably, and I looked behind me, only noticing now that the footsteps had stopped. I tried to explain to him that there was a man chasing me, but he didn't believe me. We ended up not leaving, but I watched the woods, and I saw a man walk out with something in his hands. It was shiny, and as I got a better look, I realized that it was a knife. I don't know what would have happened if this man had caught me alone in the woods, but when I think about it, I get chills down my spine. This memory wasn't scary to me a couple of years ago, but looking back on it, I could have been kidnapped. This happened about 4 years ago. I was about 8 and my sister was about 4. We were walking around Toys R Us with my mom. It was close to my sister's birthday, so my mom told me to take her to the bathroom so she could look at toys for my sister. So I took my sister and we started walking towards the bathroom area when a random guy just walked up to us. He asked us if we wanted a toy. In my head, I was filled with excitement. I nodded my head and he told me to follow him, so we did. He took us to the bathroom area, which was convenient in my mind. We walked in the door leading to the bathroom area, and he closed the door behind us, opened the janitor closet, and was searching through a toolbox. I thought it was strange, but I was determined to get a toy, so I stayed there for a couple of minutes. But after getting bored, we asked if we could go into the bathroom. He said yes, and we went into the ladies' room. I had realized that the whole total time that had passed was about 10 minutes, and that my mom was probably getting worried. I left the bathroom and decided it'd be best if I waited a couple of more minutes before I got very impatient in waiting. I asked him if he could just give us our toy already so we could leave. He turned around as if he didn't notice us, and I saw a little bottle and a rag in his hands. Before I could react, my mom bursted into the bathroom area, and as soon as she saw the guy, she pulled us out. My mom pulled us away from the bathroom area to the front desk, demanding to see the manager. She talked to the manager for a while before we left, and we never went back to that store until a year later. After giving us a good talk about stranger danger, I don't actually remember much about what happened after, but I do remember leaving the Toys R Us sad because I didn't get a toy. As you can tell, I was a really stupid kid, and I could have potentially gotten kidnapped. Here's a personal encounter that I experienced not that long ago, and I wish to share it with everyone, just so people would be aware of the dangers. Anyway, let's get to the story. So this all started at my friend's party, and it was a blast for the past 8 hours. Then it was time for everyone to leave, but I was the only one who stayed to keep her company, so we did what we usually did, just watching movies and playing horror games. But out of the blue, she suggested that we sneak out and explore the abandoned cottage that was not very far. It was about 3 blocks away, and me being an idiot and not stopping us, I reluctantly agreed. We took a flashlight and went. When we reached it, all I could think was that it was the ugliest, most driven down cottage that I'd ever seen. But to be honest, it was the only one I've ever seen. She went in first, being the brave, badass friend that she was, and I followed behind her. She lit the flashlight, and we began searching around. I remember stepping on this kind of floorboard, and my friend, we'll call her Sarah, opened the secret door to a basement. It was odd, but she headed down anyway since she was too excited to stop. But as I was beginning to climb down, she stopped midway and screamed in terror. I got the chills immediately and sped up the ladder with her following behind. She sped out of the cottage again, and all I could do was follow her. As soon as we were out, she fell and took deep breaths, and she told me to call the police because she was injured, but I didn't see any blood or bruises or anything on her. So I called, and they arrived shortly. Her mom came as well and lectured us about how dangerous it is and how seriously we could have gotten hurt. She soon after called my mom and dad and told them everything as well. But after that day, I was never allowed to stay over at hers or her at my house. I was grounded and wasn't allowed to know what had happened. But the only thing that my mom told me was that Sarah had gotten a scratch on her stomach, but I never saw her being attacked. She just stood there. But later, the police told us that the cottage was vacant and that there was no one there. But what they did find was the most terrifying thing that still haunts me to this day. They found a finger that was freshly severed. I will never do something so stupid like that ever again.